I came home after work and saw my 6-year-old daughter's tear-streaked face and swollen black eye. When I asked her what happened, she whispered I fell down the stairs. Later I discovered it was my mother-in-law beating her because she refused to give her food to my sister-in-law's spoiled children. When I confronted her, she screamed at my trembling daughter, "You stupid little brat, I told you to keep your mouth shut." My sister-in-law added coldly, "Your kid needs to learn respect and sharing." I stayed completely calm and made one phone call that left everyone in ruins. My name is Amber, and I thought I had it all figured out. A decent job as a marketing coordinator, a loving husband named Derek, and the most precious 6-year-old daughter in the world, Zoe. We lived in a modest 3-bedroom house in suburban Ohio, nothing fancy, but it was ours. Well, mostly ours. Derek's mother, Gloria, had been living with us for the past 8 months after her apartment lease ended and she claimed she needed time to get back on her feet. I should have seen the red flags from the beginning. Gloria had always been critical of me, constantly making snide comments about my parenting, my cooking, my housekeeping. She'd make these remarks with a saccharine smile, as if they were helpful suggestions rather than cruel jabs. But Derek would just shrug it off, saying that's just how mom is, and I foolishly thought I could handle it for the sake of family harmony. The arrangement was supposed to be temporary. Gloria would watch Zoe after school while Derek and I worked, and in return, she'd live rent-free until she found her own place. It seemed like a win-win situation. Zoe would have her grandmother's attention, and we'd save money on childcare. What could go wrong? Everything, as it turned out. Gloria's daughter, my sister-in-law Monica, was a frequent visitor with her twin 7-year-old boys, Landon and Chase. Those kids were absolute terrors, spoiled, demanding, and used to getting their way through tantrums and manipulation. Monica was a single mother who worked part-time at a boutique and spent most of her energy posting Instagram photos of her blessed life rather than actually parenting her children. Zoe, my sweet, gentle Zoe, was the complete opposite. She was quiet, thoughtful, and incredibly generous for her age. She'd share her toys without being asked and always said please and thank you. Teachers at her school constantly praised her behavior and kindness toward other children. She was my pride and joy, the light of my life. The first few months with Gloria seemed to go smoothly enough. Zoe would come home from school and do her homework at the kitchen table while Gloria prepared dinner. There were occasional complaints from Gloria about Zoe being too quiet or not social enough, but nothing that raised serious alarm bells. Derek and I were both working full-time and dealing with our own stresses, so we were grateful for the help with childcare. But then things began to change. Zoe started becoming more withdrawn. She'd come home from school and immediately go to her room instead of chatting with me about her day like she used to. Her appetite decreased, and she began having nightmares that would wake her up crying in the middle of the night. When I asked her what was wrong, she'd just say she was tired or had a bad dream. She became jumpier too, flinching when adults approached her too quickly or spoke too loudly. I attributed these changes to stress from starting first grade and having her grandmother around more often. Kids adapt to change differently, and Zoe had always been sensitive. I thought she just needed time to adjust to the new routine. The turning point came on a Thursday in late October. I had been working late on a particularly demanding project and didn't get home until nearly 7 o'clock. Derek was stuck in traffic from a work conference in Columbus and wouldn't be home until after 8. The house was unusually quiet when I walked through the front door. That's when I saw her. Zoe was sitting on the living room couch, her small body curled into a tight ball. Her long brown hair hung like a curtain around her face, but I could see the tear tracks on her cheeks glistening in the lamplight. When she looked up at me, my heart stopped. Her left eye was swollen shut, the skin around it a deep purple-black that made my stomach churn. There was a small cut on her lower lip, and her nose looked slightly swollen. She looked like she'd been in a fight with someone twice her size. "Zoe." I dropped my purse and rushed to her side, my hands shaking as I gently touched her face. "Baby, what happened? Are you okay?" She flinched away from my touch, which broke my heart even more. My own daughter was afraid of physical contact. "I fell down the stairs," she whispered, her voice barely audible. She wouldn't meet my eyes, instead staring down at her hands folded in her lap. "Which stairs? When did this happen?" I was trying to keep my voice calm, but inside I was panicking. Our house had stairs leading to the second floor, but they were carpeted and had a sturdy railing. It seemed unlikely that a fall would cause this kind of damage to her face. "The ones upstairs." I was running and I tripped. Her voice was monotone, like she was reciting a script. "Where's Grandma Gloria?" I asked, looking around the empty living room. "She went to Aunt Monica's house with Landon and Chase. She said she'd be back later." My blood began to boil. Gloria had left my injured daughter alone in the house while she went to visit Monica? What kind of grandmother does that? I scooped Zoe up carefully and drove straight to the emergency room. The doctor, a kind woman named Drive Morales, examined Zoe thoroughly while I held her hand. After what felt like hours, Drive Morales asked to speak with me privately in the hallway. "Mrs. Thompson," she said, her expression serious, "I need to ask you some questions about Zoe's injuries." My heart was pounding. Is she going to be okay? She'll heal just fine physically. But I'm concerned about the nature of these injuries. The bruising pattern around her eye and the split lip are not consistent with a fall down carpeted stairs. They look more like impact injuries from a hand or fist. The words hit me like a physical blow. Are you saying someone hit her? I'm saying that's a possibility we need to consider. Has Zoe been around anyone recently who might have harmed her? Any new caregivers or family members in the house? I told her about Gloria living with us and watching Zoe after school. Dr. Martinez nodded and made notes in her chart. We're required to file a report with Child Protective Services anytime we suspect child abuse, she explained. They'll want to investigate to ensure Zoe's safety. The drive home was silent except for Zoe's quiet sniffling in the back seat. My mind was racing with possibilities, but I kept coming back to Gloria's strange absence and Zoe's obvious fear. When we arrived home, Derek's car was in the driveway, and I could see lights on in the kitchen. I carried Zoe inside and found Derek pacing in the living room while Gloria sat primly on the couch, her purse clutched in her lap like she was ready to leave at any moment. "Amber. Thank God you're home," Derek rushed over to us. "Mom told me Zoe had an accident. Is she okay?" I looked between Derek and Gloria, noting how Gloria avoided eye contact with me. "We need to talk," I said quietly. "Zoe, why don't you go get ready for bed? I'll be up in a few minutes to tuck you in." Zoe nodded and headed upstairs without a word. Once I heard her bedroom door close, I turned to face Gloria. "The doctor said Zoe's injuries are not consistent with falling downstairs," I said, watching Gloria's face carefully. "They look like someone hit her." Gloria's expression immediately became defensive. "That's ridiculous. I told you, she fell down the stairs. I saw it happen." "Then why did you leave her alone and go to Monica's house instead of taking her to the hospital?" "She said she was fine. Kids fall all the time. I didn't think it was serious." Derek was looking back and forth between us, confusion evident on his face. "Mom, what exactly happened today?" Gloria's story kept changing. First, she said Zoe fell while running upstairs. Then she said Zoe fell while coming downstairs. When I pressed for more details, she became flustered and started contradicting herself. "I think we need to have a family meeting," I said finally. "With Monica too, since she was apparently here when this happened." The next evening, we gathered in our living room, Derek, Gloria, Monica, and myself. Zoe was upstairs in her room, supposedly doing homework, but I suspected she was listening from the top of the stairs. Landon and Chase were at their father's house for the weekend. I started the conversation calmly, explaining what the doctor had told me and asking Gloria to walk us through exactly what had happened that Thursday afternoon. Gloria stuck to her story about Zoe falling down the stairs, but Monica kept giving her mother worried looks. "I think we need to hear from Zoe herself," I said finally. "Zoe, can you come downstairs, please?" Zoe appeared at the bottom of the stairs within seconds, confirming my suspicion that she'd been listening. She looked terrified, her good eye darting between the adults in the room. "Zoe, sweetheart," I said gently, kneeling down to her level. "I need you to tell us exactly what happened on Thursday when you got hurt. And I need you to tell the truth, okay? No one is going to be mad at you for telling the truth." Zoe's lower lip began to tremble. She looked at Gloria, who was staring at her with an intense expression that made my skin crawl. I fell down the stairs," Zoe whispered. "Zoe," I said softly, "look at Mommy. Just at Mommy. What really happened?" Zoe's eyes filled with tears. Landon and Chase were hungry when they came over after school. "Grandma Gloria made me give them my snack that you packed for me. But I was hungry too, and when I asked if I could have some of the cookies she made for them, she said no." Gloria's face was turning red. "Zoe, that's not—" "Let her finish," I said sharply, not taking my eyes off my daughter. "Landon and Chase found my Halloween candy that I was saving in my room," Zoe continued, her voice getting stronger. "They took it all and ate it. When I started crying, Grandma Gloria got really mad at me. She said I was being selfish and that I needed to learn to share." Monica was shifting uncomfortably in her chair, but she remained silent. "Then what happened, baby?" I encouraged. She grabbed my arm really hard and shook me. When I kept crying, she hit me in the face and told me to stop being a crybaby. When I fell down, she said if I told anyone what really happened, she would hurt me worse next time. The room was dead silent. I felt like I was going to be sick. "That's not true," Gloria exploded, jumping to her feet. "She's lying. She's a manipulative little brat who—" "You stupid little brat, I told you to keep your mouth shut." Gloria screamed at Zoe, who immediately started sobbing and ran behind me for protection. Monica finally spoke up, her voice cold and matter-of-fact. Your kid needs to learn respect and sharing. Landon and Chase are older, and they should get priority. Zoe is spoiled and needs to understand that the world doesn't revolve around her. I stared at Monica in complete shock. She had just essentially admitted that she knew about the abuse and approved of it. Derek was standing frozen, his mouth hanging open. Mom. Monica. Please tell me this isn't true. Of course it's not true, Gloria snapped. That child is a little liar who's been causing nothing but problems since I moved in here. She's manipulative and attention-seeking, and she's turning you all against me. But I could see the truth in Gloria's eyes, in the way she couldn't stop herself from yelling at Zoe, in Monica's casual cruelty. My daughter had been physically abused by her own grandmother, and my sister-in-law thought it was justified. I felt a strange calm wash over me. It was like everything suddenly became crystal clear. Derek, I said quietly, please take Zoe upstairs. Amber, I think we need to take Zoe upstairs. Now. Derek seemed to recognize the tone in my voice because he immediately scooped Zoe up and headed for the stairs. Once I heard Zoe's bedroom door close, I turned back to Gloria and Monica. I want both of you out of my house, I said calmly. You can't kick me out. Gloria protested. This is my son's house too. Actually, it's not. The house is in my name only because Derek's credit score wasn't good enough when we bought it 3 years ago. You have no legal right to be here. Monica stood up and grabbed her purse. Come on, Mom. We don't need to deal with this drama. Zoe probably deserved what she got anyway. That comment was the final straw, but I managed to keep my voice level. You have 15 minutes to pack your things and get out. If you're not gone by then, I'm calling the police. Gloria started to argue, but I held up my hand to stop her. I'm going to make one phone call, I said, pulling out my cell phone. That's all it will take to destroy both of your lives. Would you like to test me? Gloria and Monica exchanged worried glances. They didn't know that I had already been researching them for weeks, gathering information about their various lies and schemes. I had been planning for this moment, waiting for the right opportunity to use what I had discovered. 20 minutes later, they were gone. Derek came downstairs after helping Zoe get ready for bed. He looked shell-shocked. Amber, I'm so sorry. I had no idea this was happening. If I had known. I know you didn't know, I interrupted. But we need to talk about what happens next. The phone call I had threatened to make wasn't actually to the police or Child Protective Services, though I had already filed reports with both agencies. No, my phone call was to someone much more dangerous to Gloria and Monica's comfortable lives, a private investigator I had been secretly working with for the past month. You see, I had done my homework over the past few months. I had been suspicious of Gloria's supposed disability and Monica's claims about her financial situation long before the abuse incident occurred. Something about their stories had never added up, and I had started investigating even before Zoe was hurt. Gloria had been collecting disability benefits for a supposed back injury while living with us rent-free. She claimed she couldn't work due to chronic pain and mobility issues. However, I had watched her carry heavy grocery bags, rearrange furniture, and chase Landon and Chase around our backyard without any apparent difficulty. Monica, on the other hand, had been receiving child support from her ex-husband while also working under the table at her friend's boutique to avoid reporting the income. She was essentially double-dipping and not paying taxes on her unreported earnings. My phone call was to Jared Kim, a private investigator I had already hired weeks earlier to document Gloria's activities and Monica's employment situation. I had been building a case against them long before the abuse incident, and now I had all the evidence I needed to destroy them. Within the next few days, I finalized the evidence package Jared had been compiling. We had video evidence of Gloria doing yard work for Monica's neighbor, carrying heavy boxes, and even helping Monica move furniture into a new apartment, all activities that contradicted her disability claims. The evidence package I compiled included photos, videos, financial records I had copied from documents Gloria had left lying around our house, and detailed testimony about the abuse Zoe had suffered. I sent this package to 3 different agencies simultaneously. The first was the Social Security Administration's Office of Inspector General, along with documentation of Gloria's fraudulent disability claims. The second was the IRS, with detailed information about Monica's unreported income and tax evasion. The third was the state's Department of Human Services, with evidence of child abuse and neglect. The fallout was swift and devastating. Gloria's disability benefits were immediately suspended pending investigation. When the full investigation concluded 6 months later, she was charged with Social Security fraud and ordered to repay over $40,000 in fraudulent benefits, plus penalties and interest. Since she had no assets or legitimate income, she filed for bankruptcy, but the government debt wasn't dischargeable. She ended up working at a fast food restaurant at age 62, with her wages garnished to pay back the money she owed. Monica's situation was even worse. The IRS audit revealed 3 years of unreported income totaling over $65,000. With penalties and interest, she owed nearly $25,000 in back taxes. Her ex-husband's attorney also used the evidence of her income fraud to successfully petition for reduced child support payments, since Monica had been lying about her financial situation during their divorce proceedings. But the real kicker was when Monica's employer found out about the investigation. The boutique owner, who had been paying Monica under the table, panicked about potential liability and immediately fired her. Word spread quickly through their small social circle, and Monica found herself effectively blacklisted from similar positions in the area. The criminal charges related to Zoe's abuse were harder to prove, since it was essentially Zoe's word against Gloria's. However, the pattern of fraud and deception we had documented made Gloria's credibility questionable. The judge in the family court case was particularly unsympathetic when Gloria tried to claim she was a victim of false accusations. What really sealed their fate was what happened during the investigation process itself. Gloria and Monica, true to form, couldn't help but make things worse for themselves through their own actions and words. When Child Protective Services interviewed Gloria about the allegations, she immediately went on the defensive, claiming that Zoe was a problem child who had been out of control since moving in with us. She described Zoe as manipulative, attention-seeking, and prone to lying. The CPS worker, a seasoned professional named Nina Delgado, recognized these as classic deflection tactics used by abusers. "Can you give me specific examples of Zoe's problematic behavior?" Nina asked during their interview. Gloria's response was telling: she's selfish with her food and toys. She won't share with Landon and Chase when they come over. She cries when she doesn't get her way. She needed to learn discipline and respect. Nina pressed further: "And how did you attempt to teach her these lessons?" "I tried to reason with her, but she wouldn't listen. Sometimes children need firmer guidance." Gloria's language was careful, but her meaning was clear. The interview with Monica was even more damaging. Unlike her mother, Monica seemed to have no filter and no understanding of how her words sounded to others. "Zoe is spoiled," Monica told Nina bluntly. "Amber babies her and doesn't teach her to share. My boys are older and they should get priority when they're visiting. It's just common sense." "So you believe Zoe should give up her food and belongings to Landon and Chase?" Nina asked. "Yes, absolutely. That's what family does. Zoe needs to learn that she's not the center of the universe. And if she refused to share, what should happen then?" Monica shrugged. "Whatever it takes to teach her. Some kids don't learn through talking. They need stronger consequences." These interviews were recorded, and the transcripts became crucial evidence in our case. Both Gloria and Monica had essentially admitted that they believed physical punishment was appropriate for a 6-year-old who didn't want to give away her food and toys. But their biggest mistake came during the court proceedings themselves. Gloria, despite her attorney's advice, couldn't contain her temper when describing Zoe's behavior. During her testimony, she became increasingly agitated and hostile. "That child has been nothing but trouble since the day she was born," Gloria declared from the witness stand. "She's manipulative and sneaky. She plays victim to get attention. Amber has never disciplined her properly, and that's why she acts out." The judge, Honorable Camille Foster, interrupted Gloria's rant. "Mrs. Thompson, you're describing the behavior of a 6-year-old child. Are you saying that a 6-year-old deserved to be struck in the face hard enough to cause the injuries documented in the medical report?" Gloria's face turned red. She needed to learn respect. Children these days have no discipline because parents are too soft. In my day, we knew how to handle bratty kids. The courtroom fell silent. Gloria had just admitted to hitting Zoe while simultaneously justifying it. Her own attorney looked like he wanted to disappear into the floor. Monica's testimony was equally damaging, though in a different way. Where Gloria was explosive and defensive, Monica was cold and calculating. She showed no remorse for Zoe's injuries and continued to insist that Zoe deserved whatever punishment she had received. "Children need to understand hierarchy," Monica said calmly when questioned about the incident. "Landon and Chase are older, and they're my children. Zoe should have deferred to them. If she had just shared her snacks and toys like she was supposed to, none of this would have happened." "So you're saying Zoe caused her own injuries?" the judge asked incredulously. "I'm saying actions have consequences. Zoe chose to be defiant, and she learned what happens when you don't follow the rules." The judge's expression grew increasingly stern as Monica continued her testimony. When asked about Zoe's black eye and split lip, Monica showed no emotion whatsoever. "Children get hurt sometimes when they're being disciplined. It's unfortunate, but Zoe needed to learn her lesson." Derek, sitting beside me in the courtroom gallery, was visibly shaking with anger. I had to put my hand on his arm to keep him from standing up and confronting his sister directly. The most heartbreaking part of the proceedings was when Zoe had to be interviewed by the judge. This was done in the judge's chambers, with only the court reporter, the attorneys, and a child advocate present. Derek and I were allowed to watch via closed-circuit television from another room. Zoe, dressed in her favorite purple dress and clutching a small stuffed bear, looked tiny in the large leather chair across from Judge Foster, but when she spoke, her voice was clear and steady. "The lady asked me to tell what happened," Zoe said, referring to her conversation with the child advocate. "Grandma Gloria got really mad because I didn't want to give Landon and Chase my apple slices. Mommy packed them special for me because I was still hungry after lunch." Judge Foster leaned forward slightly. "What happened when you didn't want to share your apple slices?" "Grandma Gloria grabbed my arm really tight and shook me. She said I was being selfish and that Landon and Chase were guests so they should get my food. When I started crying, she hit me right here." Zoe pointed to her eye, which had healed by then but was still slightly discolored. "Did she say anything when she hit you?" Zoe nodded solemnly. "She said if I told Mommy or Daddy what really happened, she would hurt me worse next time. She said I should tell them I fell down the stairs." "Were you afraid of Grandma Gloria?" "Yes," Zoe whispered. "She was always mean to me when Mommy and Daddy weren't home. She said I was a bad kid and that Landon and Chase were better than me." The judge asked a few more gentle questions, and Zoe answered each one honestly and without hesitation. Her testimony was consistent with everything she had told me, the doctors, and the CPS investigators. When the interview was over, Zoe was brought back to the waiting room where Derek and I were stationed. She climbed into my lap and buried her face in my neck. "Did I do good, Mommy?" she asked quietly. "You did perfect, sweetheart," I assured her. "You were so brave and honest." The final piece of evidence that destroyed Gloria and Monica's case came from an unexpected source, Landon and Chase themselves. During the investigation, CPS had interviewed Monica's children separately about their visits to our house. Initially, both boys had stuck to the story that Zoe had fallen down the stairs. But children aren't very good at maintaining lies under pressure, especially when questioned by skilled professionals. Landon, the more talkative of the twins, eventually cracked during his second interview. "We didn't mean for Zoe to get hurt so bad," he admitted to the CPS worker. "Grandma Gloria just got really mad because Zoe was crying about her candy." The worker pressed gently for more details, and Landon's story came tumbling out. He and Chase had indeed taken Zoe's Halloween candy from her room, eating all of it while she was doing homework downstairs. When Zoe discovered what they had done and started crying, Gloria had become furious. "Grandma said Zoe was being a crybaby and that she needed to learn to share," Landon explained. "She grabbed Zoe and shook her really hard. When Zoe kept crying, Grandma hit her in the face. Zoe fell down and hit her mouth on the coffee table." Chase, when interviewed separately, corroborated his brother's account. Both boys seemed genuinely upset about what had happened to Zoe, but they had been too afraid of their grandmother and mother to tell the truth initially. Armed with this additional testimony, the case against Gloria became airtight. Not only had she physically abused Zoe, but she had also coached the other children to lie about it and threatened Zoe to keep her quiet. Derek and I attended every court hearing, with Zoe safely at home with a babysitter I trusted completely. Gloria and Monica kept trying to paint themselves as the victims, claiming that I had manipulated Zoe into lying about the abuse. But their own behavior in court, Gloria's explosive temper and Monica's cold indifference to Zoe's well-being, only served to support our case. The family court judge issued a restraining order prohibiting both Gloria and Monica from having any contact with Zoe. The judge made it clear that any violation of the order would result in immediate jail time. This happened about 4 months after the initial incident, once all the evidence had been presented and the fraud investigations were well underway. 6 months after that terrible Thursday evening, I received a call from Jared Kim with an update on Gloria and Monica's current situations. Gloria was living in a studio apartment in a rough part of town, working double shifts at McDonald's to try to make ends meet while her wages were being garnished. She had applied for several other jobs but couldn't pass background checks due to her fraud conviction. Her social circle had largely abandoned her after news of the child abuse allegations spread through her church and neighborhood. Monica had been forced to move back in with her ex-mother-in-law because she couldn't afford rent on her own. Her Instagram account, once filled with photos of her blessed life, had gone quiet. Landon and Chase were struggling in school and acting out, possibly due to the stress and instability in their lives. "They're both essentially unemployable in any decent job," Jared explained. "The fraud convictions will follow them for years, and the child abuse allegations make them unfit for any position involving children or vulnerable adults." I felt a grim satisfaction hearing this news, but also a profound sadness. These were people who were supposed to love and protect Zoe, and instead they had traumatized her for their own selfish reasons. Zoe herself was doing much better. With Gloria gone from the house and regular therapy sessions, she was slowly returning to her old self. Her nightmares became less frequent, and she started sleeping through the night again. Her appetite returned, and she began chatting with me about her school day like she used to. The bruises on her face healed within a few weeks, but the emotional scars took longer. She was still sometimes jumpy around strangers and didn't like being left alone with new babysitters. Her therapist assured us that these were normal responses to trauma and that Zoe was making excellent progress in her recovery. Derek and I also started couples counseling to work through the damage this situation had caused to our marriage. He was dealing with tremendous guilt about not protecting Zoe from his mother and sister. I was struggling with anger and resentment about his family's treatment of our daughter. "I keep thinking about all the signs I missed," Derek said during one of our sessions. Zoe was becoming more withdrawn, she was having nightmares, she was flinching when adults approached her. "How did I not see what was happening?" "Because you trusted your mother," our counselor replied. "And because abusers are often very good at hiding their behavior from other adults while terrorizing children in private." It took almost a year, but Derek and I were able to work through our issues and rebuild our trust. He made it clear that his loyalty was to Zoe and me, not to his mother or sister. When Gloria tried to contact him through mutual relatives, begging for forgiveness and claiming she had learned her lesson, Derek blocked her number and refused to engage. The most satisfying moment came about 18 months after the initial incident. I was at the grocery store with Zoe when we ran into Monica in the checkout line. She looked terrible, her hair was unwashed, she was wearing clothes that looked like they hadn't been washed in days, and she had dark circles under her eyes. She saw us and immediately tried to avoid eye contact, but Zoe tugged on my sleeve. "Mommy, isn't that Aunt Monica?" Zoe asked loudly enough for people around us to hear. Monica's face turned red with embarrassment. I looked directly at her and said in a clear, calm voice, "Yes, sweetheart. That's the woman who thought it was okay for Grandma Gloria to hit you." Several people in line turned to stare at Monica, and I could see the shame and humiliation on her face. She abandoned her cart and practically ran out of the store. Zoe looked up at me with confusion. "Why did she run away?" "Because she knows what she did was wrong," I explained. "And she's embarrassed that other people know about it too." "Good," Zoe said with a brutal honesty that only children possess. "She should be embarrassed." That night, as I was tucking Zoe into bed, she asked me a question that caught me off guard. "Mommy, are you proud of me for telling the truth about what happened?" "Of course I am, sweetheart. It takes a lot of courage to tell the truth when someone has threatened you." "I was really scared," she admitted. "But I knew you would protect me." I kissed her forehead and smoothed her hair back from her face. "I will always protect you, Zoe. Always." "What happened to Grandma Gloria and Aunt Monica? Are they in jail?" I had been dreading this question. "They're not in jail, but they're in a lot of trouble. They have to pay back money they stole, and they can't get good jobs anymore. And they're not allowed to see you ever again." "Good," Zoe said firmly. "They were mean to me." "Yes, they were. But you're safe now, and you always will be." As I turned off Zoe's light and closed her bedroom door, I reflected on how much our lives had changed over the past year and a half. The phone call I had made that night hadn't just destroyed Gloria and Monica's lives, it had saved Zoe's. Gloria had been a textbook child abuser, using intimidation and threats to keep Zoe silent while presenting a false face to the adults around her. Monica had been an enabler, prioritizing her own spoiled children over Zoe's well-being and safety. They had both counted on Zoe being too young and too scared to speak up. They had underestimated both Zoe's courage and my determination to protect her. The financial and legal consequences they faced were severe, but in my opinion, they were entirely deserved. Gloria had stolen money from taxpayers while abusing her own granddaughter. Monica had cheated on her taxes while neglecting her parental duties and endorsing child abuse. But beyond the legal and financial implications, they had also lost something much more valuable: their reputations and relationships. Word of the abuse and fraud had spread through their social circles, and they found themselves isolated and ostracized. The community they had once been part of wanted nothing to do with them. Sometimes people ask me if I feel guilty about destroying their lives so thoroughly. The answer is simple: absolutely not. When you hurt a child, especially when you hurt my child, there are consequences. I gave them multiple opportunities to take responsibility and make amends, but they chose to double down on their lies and cruelty instead. The phone call I made wasn't an act of revenge, it was an act of justice. Zoe deserved to be protected, and other children deserved to be protected from Gloria and Monica's future actions. Zoe is now 7.5 years old and thriving. She's confident, happy, and secure in the knowledge that her parents will always stand up for her. She's never asked to see Gloria or Monica again, and I'm grateful for that. Derek and I recently had another baby, a son we named Connor. Zoe is an amazing big sister, gentle and protective with him. Sometimes I watch her playing with Connor and marvel at her resilience and capacity for love despite what she went through. The restraining order against Gloria and Monica is still in effect and will remain so until Zoe turns 18. If they violate it, they'll face immediate jail time. So far, they've been smart enough to stay away. I still have Jared Kim on retainer, just in case. He sends me quarterly updates on Gloria and Monica's situations, more out of professional curiosity than any real concern that they might cause trouble again. Gloria is still working at fast food restaurants, still having her wages garnished, still living in low-income housing. She's tried to contact Derek a few times through intermediaries, but he's remained firm in his decision to cut her out of our lives completely. Monica briefly tried to reconcile with her ex-husband, hoping to get back together and improve her financial situation, but he wanted nothing to do with her after learning about her role in Zoe's abuse. Landon and Chase are now 9 years old and, according to my sources, struggling with behavioral issues that their mother seems unable or unwilling to address. The ripple effects of that one phone call continue to spread outward, affecting not just Gloria and Monica but their extended families and social networks. It's a reminder that actions have consequences, and sometimes those consequences are far more severe and long-lasting than people expect. I've become something of an advocate for child protection in our community. I speak at parent-teacher meetings about recognizing the signs of abuse, and I volunteer with a local organization that helps families navigate the legal system when dealing with child abuse cases. Many people have told me they admire how I handled the situation, staying calm, gathering evidence, and using the legal system to protect Zoe rather than taking matters into my own hands. But the truth is, I was terrified the entire time. I was scared that I wouldn't be able to protect Zoe, scared that Gloria and Monica would find a way to retaliate, scared that the legal system would fail us. Looking back now, I realize that the most important thing I did wasn't making that phone call or hiring the private investigator or filing the reports. The most important thing I did was believing Zoe when she finally found the courage to tell me the truth. Too many children suffer in silence because the adults in their lives either don't believe them or don't want to deal with the inconvenience of addressing abuse. Zoe was lucky that I was willing to listen and to take action, but not every child is so fortunate. If you're reading this and you suspect that a child in your life is being abused, please don't ignore the signs. Children rarely lie about abuse, and they need adults who will believe them and protect them. The consequences of speaking up might seem daunting, but the consequences of staying silent are far worse. Zoe still sometimes asks me about that night when I made the phone call. She knows it was the turning point, the moment when everything changed. "What did you say on the phone that was so important?" She asked me recently. I thought about how to explain it to her in terms she could understand. "I told the truth about what Grandma Gloria and Aunt Monica had done," I said. "Sometimes the truth is the most powerful weapon you have." "Will you always tell the truth?" she asked. "Always," I promised. "And I'll always believe you when you tell me the truth too." That, I think, is the real moral of this story. Truth has power, justice has consequences, and sometimes the quietest phone call can create the loudest impact. Gloria and Monica learned that the hard way, and I have no regrets about being the one to teach them that lesson. Zoe is safe, our family is stronger, and justice was served. One phone call changed everything, and I'd make that same call again in a heartbeat.